My wife's lover tried to bully me. He didn't expect what happened next. It was almost unnaturally quiet as I made my way across town. The sound of tires crunching over fallen leaves was drowned out by the thundering beat of my heart, sending a frantic rhythm against my chest. Each moment felt like an eternity, and my thoughts spiraled further into darkness with every block I passed. Who could be at my house? A neighbor? A friend? Or with increasing dread, the unmistakable figure of the person I'd suspected but dared not confront, Mia's lover. The very thought ignited a fire of rage and helplessness within me. Margaret's warning resonated like a bell tolling in my mind. The way she uttered suspicious made it all the more real, thrusting me headlong into a tale I never thought I'd become a part of. I had noticed the changes in Mia, the way she turned her gaze away more often, the light laughter that once filled our home being replaced with a distant gaze. Conversations had slipped away like sand between our fingers, and I brushed it off as the weariness of daily life, the routine drudgery weighing down love's buoyancy. But now, that momentary doubt transformed into a festering wound, twisting deeper at the thought of betrayal. As I rounded the corner to our house, the sight of our front porch sent a shiver down my spine. Our once welcoming home stood guarded, its familiarity suffocating. Would a stranger's presence shift the delicate balance of everything I held dear? Margaret's voice echoed again. You might want to check on Mia. My stomach churned, and the reality of the potential confrontation clawed at my insides. Would I expose Mia for what she had become? Or would I shatter myself in that pursuit of answers? The door held a weight I never wanted to lift. I stood before it, hand raised to knock but faltering at the last moment. The thought of Mia, my wife, just on the other side filled me with both hope and dread. What if I was wrong? What if I was about to ruin everything? Clenching and unclenching my fists, I steeled myself and turned the doorknob, stepping into a reality I had never imagined. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of spices and something sweet baking in the oven. For a moment, the old warmth of home wrapped around me, a false guise over the turmoil beneath. But this was the home I once knew, and yet it felt like a stranger's. With hesitant steps, I made my way towards the kitchen, the hub of our life together. Voices mingled and laughter danced through the air, slicing through the silence like a knife. As I drew closer, I spotted them, a scene straight out of a nightmare. Mia stood before the stove, hair cascading over her shoulders, looking every bit the image of the woman I fell in love with. But beside her was Vincent, his presence an unwelcome specter. My heart sank into the pit of my stomach as annoyance at the audacity of this situation blended with disbelief. How could she? The sight of them together felt like daggers driven deep where I once believed there was trust. Mia? I croaked, stepping into the kitchen. Suddenly, the laughter halted. Her eyes widened, and the room plunged into an eerie silence. I was an intruder in a twisted farce, each innocent glance exchanged between them a weapon aimed at my heart. Nathan, pull yourself together. The words echoed in my mind like a mantra, urging me to maintain some semblance of dignity. But even as they were conjured, they felt hollow against the weight of betrayal. What's going on here? I asked, forcing my voice to remain steady, despite the cracks threatening to splinter my facade. Oh, Nathan. I didn't expect you home, Mia replied, her voice imbued with forced cheerfulness, desperately trying to patch an impossible chasm. But the way she avoided my gaze told me everything I needed to know. Sitting awkwardly at the kitchen table, Vincent leaned back, smugness radiating from him like an unwelcome warmth. She was just making me a little brunch, he said, his tone drenched in condescension. I wanted to recoil from his arrogance, the blatant disrespect he showed for our life. Brunch, I said incredulously. Is that what we're calling this now? A friendly breakfast? Vincent shrugged, impossibly casual. The truth of the situation clouded my perspective, an unwelcome reality pressing down on my chest. You need to lighten up, Nathan. It's just a little fun. He chuckled, as if mocking me from atop his self-made pedestal. Fun. I spat, surprised at the vehemence in my own voice. Is that what you think it is? Do you really believe you can just waltz in and take what isn't yours? My pulse quickened, words spilling out like a dam bursting against the relentless tide. Mia's expression shifted, panic flickering across her features, but she remained silent, a betrayer paralyzed by her own guilt. My heart raced, mixing conflicting emotions. I wanted to lament the loss of what was once ours, but another part of me simmered for justice. I couldn't allow the pang of despair to overcome me, I was done being a victim. Can you honestly stand there and pretend this is innocent? I continued, my voice straining against the weight of pain. This is my home. Our home. I looked at Mia directly, desperate for a sign that this could be fixed. Is this how you repay years of love? By letting this man in. Mia finally spoke, her voice trembling. Nathan, it's not. No. It's not what? What could possibly justify this? I countered fiercely, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. The room, once filled with the essence of our shared life, now felt like a trap, drawing me deeper into despair. I turned away from Mia, my world swirling with confusion and anguish. I had sought comfort in the idea of home, but now it had transformed into an unrecognizable place, a battlefield of shattered dreams and broken trust. With a final glance at Mia and Vincent, I bit down on my rage and stepped out of that suffocating kitchen where laughter had become a weapon against my heart. The door slammed shut behind me, sealing in the echoes of what used to be, and leaving me to face the storm that loomed ahead. My defining moment was yet to come. I didn't know how or when, but I'd find a way out of this wreckage. I stepped back into the cold metal embrace of the doorknob, my breaths coming fast and shallow, heart hammering like a drum against the walls of my chest. Outside, the front porch felt foreign beneath my feet, each step sinking deeper into the foundation of despair that threatened to swallow me whole. The sun cast an unsuspecting warmth over the neighborhood, illuminating the moments that had once painted my life with happiness, now scattered like confetti in the wake of a storm. I wanted to scream, to shatter that perfect autumn day with a cacophony of my pain, but I couldn't. Instead, I ground my teeth together, felt the warmth of tears pooling at the corners of my eyes, but refused to let them fall. I needed clarity, a moment of lucidity amid the chaos. I walked down the steps, anger vibrating through my body like an electric current. The laughter resonating within those walls haunted me, the sound of my life laughing at me from behind closed doors, behind a facade that Mia had been expertly crafting all along. She had been braiding the threads of deception right before my eyes, forging a bond with someone who had no place in our lives. As I staggered away from the house, I fumbled for my phone, my fingers shaking as I searched for Aaron's number. He would be a lifeline, a tether to the reality I was now struggling to grasp. No sooner had the screen lit up than the urgency in my heartbeat rose with anxiety. What was I supposed to tell him? How could I articulate the hurricane of betrayal without losing the grip on the remnants of my own sanity? I pushed down the urge to break down, forcing each digit into the keypad as if etching the truth in stone. Pressing the call button, I gripped the phone like a lifebuoy thrown into treacherous waters, listening to the ring's echo in my almost empty surroundings. Aaron, I need you, I finally managed to choke out when he picked up. My voice cracked, revealing a hint of the deeper turmoil beneath my exterior. It's Mia? I walked in on something. What? What do you mean? He asked, his voice instantly serious, a floorboard creaking beneath the weight of my revelation. She's with Vincent, I hissed, barely able to utter the name that felt like poison on my tongue. The silence on the other end felt unbearable, a gap filled with my spiraling dread. Wait, you just confronted them. His tone shifted, a mixture of surprise and concern pouring forth. Yeah, yes. And he just sat there. I struggled to maintain control, pacing along the cracked pavement of our porch, the familiar surroundings amplifying the foreignness of the situation. Like it was all just a joke, like I was a fool. A small sigh escaped Aaron, and I could hear him grappling with how to respond. This is really messed up, Nate. I'm on my way. As I hung up, the words echoed in my mind, a stark reminder of the turbulence that lay ahead. With each passing moment, the facade of my life continued to collapse. Shattered pieces of who I was spread out like a broken glass, not sharp and deadly, but fragile and scattered. I moved like a ghost, wandering through a world that would no longer hold the same meaning. My steps carried me aimlessly down the street, my thoughts racing at a pace that strained my sanity. What did this mean for us? Could I still salvage what we had? My heart wrestled fiercely with those questions, torn between the deep-rooted love I still felt for Mia and the blaring signals that screamed betrayal from every corner of my being. The vividness of my surroundings blurred against the confusion spiraling inside. Children giggled in the distance, their innocent laughter stark against the backdrop of my suffocating grief. The once cheerful church bells chimed, a lament that only heightened my isolation. I was now an unwilling outsider, casting my shadow over every joyful scene I passed. Soon, I found myself standing in front of a nearby cafe, the rich aroma of brewing coffee wafting through the air, a sound and scent so familiar yet completely foreign to me now. I stepped inside, greeted by the warm glow of the overhead lights and the sound of a barista humming a tune. It felt like stepping into an alternate universe where heartache had no right to intrude. I staked out a corner table, the soft leather of the chair digging into my back, grounding me with that faint sense of familiarity that already felt like a relic. I ordered a black coffee, a bitter balm to my turbulent thoughts, the waitress's smile and small talk going unnoticed by me. As I waited, I couldn't shake the sensation that I was living in a dream, one where I was trapped in a never-ending loop of pain. My mind scrolled through memories of Mia, dancing in our kitchen, cooking together, our laughter blending as we shared cups of coffee in the morning light. Every happy moment felt tainted now, returning as a distorted reflection of the husband I thought I was. Like shards of glass in my heart, they blended and broke in a symphony of betrayal. I pulled my phone from my pocket, staring at it like it was a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. I couldn't text Mia. The thought of facing her felt insurmountable. I would need to confront her again, but now it would be a battle to protect the shards of my dignity. Just then, the bell over the cafe door tinkled, and Aaron strolled inside. He spotted me, and a look of concern washed over his face as he approached, brimming with the urgency of a man armed for a fight. "There you are," he said, dropping heavily into the chair across from me. "You good?" I shrugged, the weight of my turmoil pulling me down like an anchor. "I'm here," I said simply, attempting to swallow the surge of emotions that threatened to engulf me again. "Let's talk this out," he urged, leaning in with a steady conviction that reminded me I wasn't completely alone, despite the tempest inside my heart. Those words hung in the air between us, promising a path through the chaos waiting to be navigated, a maze of emotions that would lead me either back into darkness or toward the faint glimmer of a future rebuilt anew. With each heartbeat, the need to regain my footing grew, and I silently vowed to confront both Vincent and Mia armed with clarity, unwavering determination, and Aaron at my side. With Aaron by my side, I steeled myself, the plan to confront Mia and Vincent crystallizing into something akin to a lifeline. My feet felt heavy on the sidewalk as we approached the house, but the knots in my chest tightened further with each step I took. Laughter floated through the open kitchen window, sweet and carefree, sowings of laughter that blossomed like dramatic flowers in a field where mine had withered. The sound, so familiar and haunting, pierced through my skin and wrapped around my heart, tugging me into a spiral of anguish. Is this happening? Am I just really going to walk in on my wife like this? I turned to Aaron, desperation pooling in my voice, and he nodded, the look in his eyes a blend of empathy and frustration. Both of us knew the stakes of this confrontation, yet what lay before me felt surreal. It was a collision course with dissolution and betrayal. We paused at the entrance, and I could almost feel the warmth of the kitchen radiating outward, inviting me in, like a siren's call. I swallowed hard, grappling with the recognition that my entire world lay beyond that door, painted in shades of love and laughter that now felt like cruel mockery. Perhaps I should have turned back, walked away from this dwelling that had once offered safety and love, but there was a fierce determination inside me, igniting every step toward what lay ahead. As we stepped through the threshold, time momentarily froze, a wide expanse of confusion and clarity colliding in a single heartbeat. The scene before me felt like some twisted cinematic moment. Mia sat at our kitchen table, glowing, a dazzling smile anchoring her features. She flicked her hair back, wrapped in laughter and the moment, entirely unaware of my tumultuous entrance into their fabric of deceit. I felt exposed, standing there like an uninvited guest at a party filled with joy while I was drowning in despair. Her visage, usually radiant, now felt charged with something else, pride, perhaps, or indifference. I wanted her to notice me, to feel the tremors of my panic and confusion. Instead, Mia continued about her evening, as if I were the shade haunting our home, unwanted and silent. And then there was Vincent, smug, lean, and exuding a confidence that made my skin crawl. He draped his arm casually across the back of Mia's chair, a claim staked within my own territory, an affront that stung more than I could have anticipated. He caught my gaze, a wicked smile curling at the corners of his lips, as if our confrontation were some sport in which he had already secured the victory. The juxtaposition of my heartbreak and their laughter dug deep, pulling harder, like shards of ice piercing my resolve. "Mia," I stammered, the words escaping in a ragged whisper that no longer felt potent. "What is going on here?" The question hung heavy in the air, weighted with unspoken accusations, tinged with disbelief that begged to be validated. She turned, the surprise in her eyes quickly transforming into an unsettling calm. She set her wine glass down gently, a delicate balancing act of nonchalance. "Nathan, you're home early," she replied, her tone bordering on detached, each syllable shrouded in a calm I could hardly comprehend. My heart crackled with frustration. How could she act as if nothing were amiss? "It's not early, Mia. I came home to find you," I fumbled, searching her gaze for some sign of remorse, something deeper than the shallow pretense that now felt like a bitter poison in my veins. "Find me," she echoed, confusion and annoyance threading through her voice, a hint of irritation at my interruption. Dread washed over my skin like a cold wave, the blood rushing in my ears drowning out the joyful clinks of glasses and murmurs of careless intimacy behind me. "That's rich, coming from you," Vincent interjected, slathering his words in mockery. His arrogant composure shattered the air surrounding us, sending tendrils of anger curling through my chest. "You really think you have a say in this? You've been gone for so long, man." Each word struck a deep chord of humiliation within me, tearing away the thin veil of hope that had clung stubbornly to the boundaries of my heart. Anger flooded my thoughts, battling against the helplessness that threatened to sweep over me. "I've been gone." The realization hit me like a punch. What the hell is that supposed to mean? "Let's not pretend you were fully present in your home." His laughter rose, a cruel mockery that felt like daggers aimed at my self-worth. "You've put work before everything for ages, Nathan. You can't just waltz in and expect her to wait forever. You think that justifies this?" I spit back. Each word was heavy, fortified with the presence of Aaron, who stood against the wall like a boulder of strength, silently urging me to stay grounded rather than lose myself among their chaos. "Look," Mia finally spoke, her voice a breath as she rose from the table, her expression shifting into something resembling defensive anger, only clouding my confusion further. "We've been drifting. You've been putting your job first. And she took a step back, her posture rigid. "We were lonely." Lonely. The words slid from my tongue like sludge. "You betray our vows, and you call it loneliness?" I couldn't rein in the hurt spilling forth, the anguish and disappointment that clawed at my chest, trapping me under the weight of betrayal. "Don't walk in here with your righteous indignation, Nathan," she insisted, her voice sharp, a dagger cutting through the pretense. She turned away, casting her gaze toward Vincent, who propped himself up against the table, a blatant smirk lingering as if relishing the moment's sordid spectacle. "You have no idea what you've left behind." It was suffocating, standing in the room with them, the warmth of our shared home now tainted, the remnants of our life together crackling in the air like electrified silence. I found myself at a crossroads, caught between sorrow and anger, while desperately trying to hold on to some fragment of who I used to be. "You don't get to rewrite this narrative, Mia," I said slowly, each word a careful measure in the torrent of emotion swirling through me. "I still care about us," I pressed, voicing the remnants of belief that flickered weakly within me. "But you need to come clean about what's happening." Suddenly, the room went still, and the weight of my demand echoed through the walls, a poignant summoning of truth that waited, hovering like a storm cloud, ready to spill rain on the scorched earth. I could feel Aaron's presence behind me, his steadiness bolstering the silent support I desperately craved. This confrontation was no mere game. It was a revelation, a thermos of clarity ready to unearth the truth that had long lingered in the shadows. "Now it's time for you both to decide how this ends," I whispered, and a fragile but determined resolution began to swell within me, a flicker of hope that maybe this confrontation could redefine my future after all. Jessica's laughter stilled as she turned, her eyes widening in shock, but not guilt. Instead of surprise, there was annoyance, as if my intrusion had damaged the perfect evening she'd crafted for herself. "Nathan, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice lined with irritation, refusing to recognize the havoc the scene had created. The dissonance between my shattered heart and Mia's calm demeanor was physically palpable, each glance between us thickening the air with tension. Mia's presence, the radiant smile that had once sent waves of comfort through me, now felt manipulative, an adept mask shielding her betrayal from recognition. Anger surged through me, flooding the wounds that had already been cut. A marriage that had felt so secure was crumbling before my eyes, the foundation of trust dissolving into dust. "Don't play innocent with me, Mia." I exploded, my voice cracking under the weight of disbelief and rage. For a fleeting moment, I could feel her stillness, an icy acknowledgement of my hurt trapped within the illusion of respectability they tried to uphold. You think I wouldn't notice, with your late nights, your work obligations? These are my friends you're sitting with. As I spoke those words, I could see her shift uncomfortably, but it was Vincent's demeanor that ignited the fury racing through me, a casual exhibition of confidence that draped over the table like a veil that I dared not lift. He leaned back, his eyes glinting with amusement, lips curling into a smirk that raked over my weary soul. "Easy, man," he said dismissively, a mockery of comfort in his tone. "You shouldn't be so possessive." Each word he uttered felt like a personal violation, igniting red-hot embers of rage rolling through my limbs. My heart, once a sanctuary of love, now a battleground of betrayal I never signed up for. Not possessive, Vincent. Just protective of what I thought was mine. I shot back, the tremble in my voice betraying the deeper layers of grief intertwined with the anger. Mia watched the exchange, her posture stiffening, her expression a blend of tension and discomfort. I could see that her bravado was unraveled, yet it repulsed me how she still carried an air of insouciance, as if our past had already been chalked up to a quaint story of young love gone stale. "This isn't about you or this posturing," she retorted, her frustration becoming a living entity in the room, consuming our small circle of interaction. "This is life, Nathan. You were gone. You have no right to dictate my happiness." "No right?" The incredulity rising within me was hard to contain. I felt like a weight was gathering in my throat, a tumult of emotions I can no longer ignore. "I trusted you, Mia. I've sacrificed so much for us." I pinched my eyes shut for a brief moment, summoning strength from the chaos enveloping us, pushing back against the urge to collapse under the weight of this moment. "A lot of good that did," she snapped, her words sharp, slicing through the air like blades. The truth of her statement hung there, bitter and raw. I had invested in countless late nights at the office, convincing myself that my unyielding dedication provided security, only to come home to find my heart being echoed in the laughter of my wife and her paramour. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, trembling with a need to lash out, to force my feelings, my pain, into her field of vision, demanding acknowledgement. But all I felt was echoing hollowness. "I can't believe you would frame this as my fault," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do you hear yourself?" Vincent interjected once more, leaning heavily on the table, his body relaxed yet predatory. "You need to face reality. This is not a movie where love conquers all. You've been checked out for too long." His bitter laughter echoed, collisioning with my desperate resolve. The reality at that moment felt like a barricade closing in as I clenched my jaw, willing my breath to slow. This isn't about movie plots or cautionary tales. This is about breaking promises. And for what? I glared right back at him, the truth piercing through the anger. "What does she have that I don't? What's the matter, Nathan? You didn't think Mia was just going to sit back and wait around for you, did you?" He jeered, undeterred by the storm brewing before us. "Stop," Mia said sharply, shaking her head, her facade flickering with a mix of indignation and nerves. The tension that hung low around us was palpable, a creeping shadow blurring the memories woven deeply in the fabric of this home. "Just stop. Stop," I repeated incredulously. "You think I'm going to just sit here and watch you rewrite our narrative? To sit quietly while you two pretend this is a normal dinner party?" Mia's expression shifted from confrontational to one tinged with an unexpected vulnerability, and in that moment, I caught a glimpse of the woman I once adored, cloaked beneath layers of defensiveness. "You put your career above everything, Nathan," she said quietly, almost breathless, the fiery rhetoric dissipating like smoke. "I tried to talk to you, tried to make you understand that we were drifting apart." "Drifting?" I echoed, the word a fresh wound. "This is more than drifting, Mia. This is a betrayal." The hush fell heavy again, the gravity of her inaction bringing the air around us to a stale standstill. My heart pounded with each breath, the wooden table between us feeling simultaneously like a barrier and an invitation, like the thin line that marked the difference between love and hatred. "It's not just my fault," she pressed, her voice trembling now, the crack in her facade becoming more apparent. "You were gone long before this." Maybe I was, I admitted, the raw honesty slipping through my lips like a confession. "But that doesn't justify the choices you made." "Then what do you want?" she challenged, defiance flickering against the backdrop of my pain. "Do you want me to end it all? Come crawling back to you? Tell me I've made a mistake?" Eyes locked, there was desperation behind them, a hidden pleading that felt too raw to expose in that charged moment. I want you to think, I replied, voice low, almost pleading. I want you to strip away the walls and decide what you want. Do you still care? Or are we just ghosts in this house? The question loomed large, an invitation for honesty, but instead of an answer, the silence thickened around us. The weight of decision hung beyond us, palpable yet untouched. I had always thought love required blind faith, but this revelation was different. It was a reckoning not just for Mia, but for both of us. Vincent, watching us with an amused attachment, seemed to sense the shift and eased back, letting the spotlight flicker between the two of us like a distant star threatening to flicker out. The tension dialed back, knotted cords still tethering us together, but among the chaos, something changed, the fragile possibility of an ending. I inhaled deeply, hoping the air would fill my lungs with clarity rather than desperation. The bitter sweetness of impending transformation stirred within me, trumpeting my resolve. Maybe confronting Mia today was more than just about unveiling a betrayal. It was about understanding what we wanted in the aftermath. Now it's time for you both to decide how this ends, I whispered, each word tinged with a newfound resolve, setting the stakes that lay before us. The air crackled, an array of indecision intertwining with hope. We stood on the precipice, teetering between what was lost and what could still be salvaged, a chance to redefine not just our past but our futures as well. A confrontation erupted, one I never anticipated would become the catalyst for my transformation. We stood toe-to-toe, a lion in a cage rattling against the bars while the hunter taunted me. Vincent's words coiled around me, tainted by arrogance, igniting a fury I hadn't yet learned to fully embrace. She never loved you. You know that, right? Always wanted someone more. Exciting, he sneered, each syllable dripping contempt. How could Mia let him speak to me this way? My heart thundered in my chest, a chaotic storm rumbling beneath my skin, each beat spurring forth a mix of humility and rage. Not possessive Vincent, I managed, my voice steady despite the tumult in my mind, just protective of what I thought was mine. Each word I spoke bore the weight of the past, the sacrifices, the late nights, the time lost in my own self-imposed exile. I could feel the heat of humiliation churning violently in my chest, igniting a sense of urgency I had almost forgotten. This was not just about confronting Vincent. It was about reclaiming myself from the depths of despair I had allowed to consume me. Mia's expression shifted, surprise flickering in her eyes before morphing into something almost akin to resignation. That look stoked the fire within. Did she expect me to back down? To lower my gaze and retreat into the shadows? I stood my ground, clinging fiercely to those last shreds of self-respect. You're not going to intimidate me, Vincent, I declared, determination surging forth as I pushed the veil of incredulity aside. The walls of the room seemed to close in around us, amplifying the tension, sharp and electric. Each breath I took felt heavier than the last. I could feel the undeniable truth curling in my chest. I was miles from the man who had allowed complacency to dull the edges of his heart in the name of sacrifices. The very thought that Mia had handed bits and pieces of herself to another man ignited a quiet rage. I may have been absent in the relationship, I continued, but I refused to be reduced to a shadow in my own life. Vincent chuckled, an arrogant dismissal of my pain that made my blood boil hotter. Please, this is laughable. Do you really think she's going to choose you over someone who can make life exciting? His words hung like a heavy fog, each syllable laden with untruths that twisted in my gut like a knife. Mia remained silent, her gaze flickering between us, reflecting confusion mixed with guilt. I searched her face, desperate for a glimmer of recognition, a name placed upon our shared struggles. This isn't a movie where love conquers all, he continued to press, pushing the encroaching darkness of self-doubt toward me. You've been checked out for too long. Checked out? I echoed incredulously, my voice rising unexpectedly. I felt the atmosphere shift, an undeniable crackle of tension suffusing the air. Maybe that's true, Vincent, but it doesn't give you the right, either of you, to rewrite our history. To take what I thought was secure. The words slipped from my mouth, heavy with regret and righteous indignation. Mia seemed taken aback, her posture rigid as she absorbed my statements with an intensity that shattered the deceitful illusion of what we had built together. This isn't just about you, she finally said, and the tremor in her voice cut me to the core. You went months without recognizing my needs, Nathan. I tried to talk to you, to make you understand that we were drifting apart. A lot of good that did, I snapped back, the bitterness of her words sprouting seeds of animosity within me. You think it's my fault? That I did this all alone? I trusted you, Mia. I sacrificed so much for us. I could feel the heat spilling over, the pain morphing into a palpable energy dancing through the air, begging for release. If you had been here, she countered, finally edging closer, a fragile, wavering wall of conviction against the backdrop of our anger. I wouldn't have felt the need to search for affirmation elsewhere. The way she said it was a jolt, a revelation intermingled with years of disappointment. Weariness submerged me as I breathed in her words, feeling my heart sink deeper into the maelstrom of our fractured relationship. This isn't just about physical presence, I retorted, the words stinging as they slipped from my lips. It's about emotional neglect. It's about being visible, about the feeling of being cherished. I can't believe you would frame this as my fault. Vincent leaned in closer, his smug expression ominously lacking humanity. Face facts, buddy. It's a different world out there. No one owes you loyalty when you're not present to give it. His voice rang out like an echo of a twisted reality, triggering an urge in me to recoil, to disappear rather than engage with this sadistic farce unfolding before us. Stop. Mia's voice cut through the growing chaos, her assertion bringing a momentary hush. The plea in her eyes hinted at an emotional vulnerability I had long craved from her. Just stop. You can't keep throwing this accusation back and forth as if it will rectify anything. It won't change what happened. Then what do you want? I shot back, feeling exposed, vulnerable. Do you want me to end this? Come crawling back to you? Tell me I've made a mistake? It was difficult to find resolve in her gaze, wading through the tangle of emotions that seemed to suffocate the very room we stood in. She paused, vulnerability flickering in the dim light. With every moment breathing life into this conversation, I could almost see the delicate threads of possibility rekindle beneath the tangle of betrayal. Yet her reluctance to fully embrace that hadn't escaped my perception. You don't get it, do you? No, I don't get it, I exclaimed, my emotions flaring as I fought to pull clarity from the chaos. You have to see how utterly unjustifiable this all is. My skin prickled as her silence hovered in the air, drawing the moment into an eerie stillness. The truth dangled between us like twinkling stars in a vast expanse, each one a memory, a feeling, a moment stained by our fading connection. Glistening and haunting all at once, yet still shimmering with the hope of what could arise from our confrontation. Maybe, I continued, taking a step closer. You need to decide whether this is truly what you want or are just seeking comfort in these fleeting moments with each other. The uncertainty lay heavy on the air, challenging both of us to move beyond it, to navigate toward healing or acceptance, one way or the other. The air crackled, an array of indecision intertwining with longing, my heart oscillating like a pendulum. You need to choose, I whispered, more of a statement than a question, feeling the weight of my own inquiry reverberating within my chest. We stood at a precipice, a crossroads unknown held tight in the grasp of our disillusionment and pain, the romance we had built now sinking into a chasm of despair. Encouraged by the stillness, I pushed deeper, recognizing that my own self-worth was rooted in my ability to stand here openly, to face what we had become and what we had lost. We have a chance, even now, to dig deeper into what we want, I continued, each word issuing forth with newfound strength. But right now, it has to start with honesty. Mia's silence consumed me, but the edges of her expression softened, perhaps acknowledging the truth that lay dormant beneath the surface. The three of us stood tangled in a moment suspended between desire and the pain we had wrought upon one another. Perhaps coming together once more could lead us toward a semblance of resolution, a chance to learn from betrayal rather than remain stagnant in the debris it had left behind. Vincent remained an unwelcome combatant hovering in the periphery, his predatory gaze mercifully withdrawn but not erased. Yet I was determined to navigate this moment, to carve a coalition, not just one of deceit against each other, but also against the lingering shadows cast by our collective histories. We stood on opposite ends, yet connected by the tragic turns we had chosen, the story unwritten before us, suggesting that perhaps endings could pivot toward new beginnings. With tensions at a boiling point, Mia's defiance crumbled like brittle leaves rustling at my feet. Her eyes darted between Vincent and me, confusion blossoming amidst an expanding tension that coiled tightly around the room. Each breath felt charged, the air thick with unspoken truths, obliterating any comforting illusions I had cherished about our life together. I give you everything, and this is how you repay me, Mia, I demanded, my voice emerging raw and jagged. I could feel the words spilling out like blood from a fresh wound, each syllable an act of reclamation. By throwing my heart into the fire? Mia opened her mouth to respond, but the words faded into the charged silence engulfing us. The gravity of our mutual betrayal pressed down upon me, an invisible weight I could no longer bear. Just when I thought I might drown in the undertow of our fight, I realized my voice had become little more than a ghost echoing through shudders. You two deserve each other, I spat, attempting to mask my breathlessness with thinly veiled disgust as I turned my back on the tableau of a shattered relationship. The moment I stepped away, something sparked within me, igniting a fierce resolve that had long remained dormant beneath layers of regret. My heart still ached, yes, but I felt simmering embers of self-preservation crackling to life. I pictured the evening light filtering through our bedroom window, once warm and inviting, now tinted with insipid shades of betrayal. I believed that I had been the one living in the shadows, but now it dawned on me that stepping away wouldn't mean losing the shadows. It would mean reclaiming the sunlight I had forgotten existed. I retreated into the living room, where Aaron stood rooted like a sentinel, assessing the battle that had unfolded. In drowning silence, we exchanged glances heavy with the weight of understanding. It was that shared knowledge that this moment would shape my reality going forward. She's crossing lines she won't come back from, I said, the words rising like smoke from an extinguished fire. My heart hammered against my ribs, and a sense of buoyancy emerged in the midst of my pain, an understanding that I would no longer be a receptacle for her selfish desires. We can't control her actions, Nathan, Aaron said, leveling his gaze with a practicality I so desperately needed. You can only control how you respond. Grieve, but don't get lost in her chaos. I nodded, allowing his words to settle in. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps this was my moment to harness that chaos and transform it into something that would finally empower me. Nothing will ever be the same again, I whispered, the realization threading an iron grip around my thoughts. My relationship, no, my entire identity, felt veiled in uncertainty and desolation. I watched the grain of the wooden floor beneath my feet, focusing on its sturdy lines, searching for some semblance of direction. But the gravity of betrayal curled around me, making each breath feel labored. Are you okay? Aaron probed, concern simmering just beneath the surface of his steady exterior. This isn't just about a marriage falling apart, Nathan. It's about understanding who you are without her. You've got to let this play out. Don't act out of anger. His words reverberated in the hollow spaces of my mind, and a wave of emotion surged underneath my skin. I opened my mouth, then closed it, forming thoughts that felt foreign. Muffled experiences came flooding back, adventures we had taken, laughter shared, and promises made beneath the night sky. They all felt like grains of sand slipping helplessly through my fingers. I thought I was doing everything right. I finally managed, the words emerging as a throaty whisper. I was present enough, wasn't I? The answer felt elusive, constantly shifting like shadows at sunset. I had thrown myself into my work to provide a life we would cherish, but perhaps I had forsaken the very foundation of our bond, the emotional connection that gave life to all our routines. It's just hard to come to terms with the fact that she needed something more. Maybe she didn't communicate, Aaron said, his tone both empathetic and honest. People drift, Nathan. It happens. But you can't retract the hurt she caused by saying she wanted more from you. Direct your energy into understanding what you need now. The clarity of my friend's words broke through my tumultuous thoughts. The reality of failure settled into something that was now louder than confusion. You're right, I said, feeling resolve awaken in my gut. I've lost sight of who I am. I've made sacrifices that have warped my existence. The narrative I had played in my head, the faithful husband, the supportive partner, now seemed comically naive. As I stood there grappling with the raw emotions swirling within, I decided to embrace more than just my sadness. My heart still thudded with anger and betrayal, yet the emerging clarity emboldened me against the shadows. Regaining a sense of self was no longer a refuge but a requirement. She doesn't get to dictate my happiness, I affirmed, gripping the edge of the table, eking out the words like droplets of bitter medicine. I don't want to be another ghost in her story. We fell into a contemplative silence, the air thick with unspoken possibilities. I remembered the moments when Mia and I had laughed over plates of food, shared dreams beneath skylines. Now those memories felt tainted and strange, reflecting cracks begging for repair. Finding your voice again is going to be vital, Aaron said, breaking the quiet. What do you want? What do you need? For a moment, I closed my eyes, letting the darkness envelop me. In the depths of the chaos, I conjured images of freedom, a life untethered from the pain of betrayal. I envisioned days anchored in self-love, where laughter returned with sincerity, unforced and untainted. A chill of excitement hacked away the darkness, allowing embers of hope to flicker anew within me. I need to redefine what love means to me, I exclaimed, emotion surging forth like a revelation at night's edge. I want my happiness to stem from within. As I opened my eyes, I met Aaron's gaze once again. This time it was filled with fierce encouragement. Then that's your path, my friend. It won't be easy, but it will give way to a future you control, a future molded by choices and desires. Being actioning fuel itself, determination bubbled up, whispering promises of what lay ahead. I'm ready to face whatever comes next, I said, clad in confidence, pivoting gracefully into a new phase of my existence. I knew this process would require patience and strength. However, I no longer felt inadequate or chained to the past. With Aaron's reassurance solidifying my decision, I could almost taste the impending storm of change rolling on the horizon, begging me to embrace it. I was no longer a passive participant within my life story. This time, I would speak my truth and ignite it into something spectacular, something that would reflect all the shades of vibrant possibility blooming beneath the cracks of loss. In the days following the confrontation, I buried myself in a storm of tumultuous emotions, each wave crashing into my sense of self like the relentless tides on the shore. Shock morphed into sorrow, that sorrow cascading into an unsettling resolve. The revelation of Mia's betrayal forced me to scrutinize every pillar of my identity. I felt as though I had been so entwined with her expectations and the fabric of our married life that I had abandoned pieces of myself along the way, lost in the abyss of our shattered relationship. Mornings became introspective rituals, where I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, searching for the man I once was, or rather, the man I could become again. My reflection showed signs of wear, hollow cheeks, tired eyes that stared back at me, questioning my very essence. But as days passed, I began to see glimmers of the man hidden behind all that pain. The face before me was not merely that of a broken husband. It was a canvas yet to be painted anew. Gradually, emotion turned from raw despair into a simmering determination, and I recognized the embers of possibility beneath my grief. With the slate of my marriage wiped clean and hollow spaces in my heart ballasted with fresh air, I reached out to friends who had stood by me breathlessly as they watched my world unravel. Aaron, a reliable lighthouse in my dark, stormy sea, became my sounding board. Now is the time for you to explore who you truly are, he urged, his voice steady and full of conviction. He recommended a stack of self-help books littered with wisdom on reclaiming identity and forging paths from the wreckage of relationships. I dove in, partially to fill the void, but largely in a quest for personal rediscovery. Each page turned like the crumbling leaves of autumn, shedding layers I had long clung to. There was a comfort in defining my emotions, the anger, the heartache, the hollowness, and transforming them from mere detractors into lessons of my evolution. I marked passages on resilience, self-love, and the importance of boundaries, and with each marking, I reaffirmed the strength within me that had been buried under years of servitude to someone else's happiness. Grieve purposefully, one passage read, but do not get lost in your grief. Use it to carve out new paths. The words echoed like a mantra and grounded me. They demanded nothing less than the germination of my passions that had withered during our marriage. Before I lost myself to the chaos of my emotions, I was a man who loved to write, jog, and create culinary delights, lost aromas of my life before the convoluted turns I had taken with Mia. In a quiet moment, I dusted off my running shoes and laced them tightly. The familiarity felt like reclaiming forgotten armor. Each stride felt therapeutic, a confrontation against the chaotic whirlwind that had consumed my spirit. Breath heaved and sweat glistened on my brow as the sun crested the horizon, illuminating my path. It was revelatory. I was reclaiming joy away from the narratives that haunted me. Reborn through the cadence of my pounding heart, I sensed hope pulsing within me. Then there was writing. I pulled out my old journal, pages yellowed and blanketed in dust. As I opened it, a flood of tactile memories washed over me, each unfolding page revealing echoes of forgotten stories. The ink glided across the paper, and I poured my heart out as catharsis raged through me. I penned anguished reflections, passions ignited through the wreckage of my marriage. I wrote tales of love and loss, exploring what happiness once was and what it might yet become. It felt as if with every letter I formed, I was chiseling pieces of myself back into existence. This stark contrast ignited within me a rich spectrum of possibilities. Cooking also became a sanctuary. I turned on the radio, its melodies dissolving the silence that once echoed heavily, and I began to experiment with recipes. Memories of meals I had shared with Mia hovered in the air, but faced invigorating freshness. Garlic sizzled in the pan as I fragmented vegetables of vibrant colors. Each stir of the spoon felt liberating, reclaiming little pieces of joy, recreating something hearty that would infuse my life with flavor, something I hadn't tasted in years. The isolation of my kitchen morphed into an oasis where I could create recipes anchored in solace and independence. These activities buzzed with energy, transforming lost time into reclaimed treasures. Invigorated, I structured a routine that beckoned me toward new horizons. Mornings filled with jubilant jogs transformed into afternoons spent immersed in culinary adventures, all while evenings fluttered with the rhythm of my fingers dancing across the keys as I wrote tales yet untold about my journey and the love that shaped it. Self-care slowly morphed from a distant concept into an actionable practice, revitalizing me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the warm embrace of satisfaction wrapping around me as I unearthed different facets of who I was. I challenged the notion that I was simply defined by Mia's choices. Instead, I began sculpting my own narrative, an identity bold enough to stand independent of her shadows. No longer did I allow the betrayal to weave tightly around my heart. Throughout those swirling days of rediscovery, I often encountered moments of doubt. Thoughts slithered in, whispering fears that perhaps I was too broken to reclaim happiness. Yet each time those specters loomed, I reminded myself of the resilience I was building brick by brick. I clung to Aaron's words. You can never allow someone else's choices to dictate your worth. Instead, as a mantra, I echoed the strength in celebrating my independence while still acknowledging the wounds raw from the past. Knowing this battle for my soul was far from over, I still shivered with excitement at the prospect of facing it. It felt exhilarating, like standing at the precipice of a cliff with the wind whipping through my hair, daring myself to leap. I had walked through darkness and emerged, perhaps not unscathed, but alive, with a renewed promise of exploration that awaited. I felt the tidal pull of hope coursing strongly in my veins, leading me toward whatever lay ahead. Little did I know new connections would soon weave their way into my narrative, igniting fireworks in what had previously felt like a black and white existence. Amidst this personal renaissance, I found myself visiting my local cafe more frequently, drawn in by the warmth of its ambience and the freedom it offered. The cafe was nestled between flower shops and bookstores, with its ivy-clad walls draping a comforting embrace around the escaping souls of the city. It was the perfect backdrop for my self-discovery, and each visit, I immersed myself in my writing, pouring out the chaos that swirled within me. One gray Thursday afternoon, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with notes of cinnamon from the pastries that lined the counter. I sat in my usual corner, fingers poised over my notebook, battling the blank page that yawned like a chasm before me. As I riffled through old pages, searching for inspiration, a cheerful laugh broke through my thoughts, curling my lips into a reluctant smile. Glancing up, I was met with a sight that nearly knocked the breath out of me. A captivating woman weaving through the tables with an effortless grace. Her chestnut hair danced like soft waves against her shoulders, and her smile seemed to light up the room. She radiated a genuine warmth that filled the air with an infectious energy, a stark contrast to the shadows that had crept through my days. Amelia's laughter carried across the room like a song, and I found myself captivated by the joy that surrounded her. It was like a beam of sunlight breaking through after a heavy rain, igniting colors that had grown dull in my life. I watched as she interacted with the barista, a playful banter bubbling between them. There was an undeniable spark to her spirit that reminded me of times when I too had laughed effortlessly, before betrayal had stained those moments. Resuming my writing felt futile amidst the current of her vivacity, and to my surprise, I found myself intrigued, my heart racing with a flutter unrecognized. As she settled at a nearby table, I could no longer resist the pull of curiosity. Leaning back in my chair, I let the attraction swirl within me, bittersweet yet exhilarating. After a brief tussle with my own anxiety, I decided to summon the courage that had seeped into my being over the past months. I took a deep breath and approached her, feeling both reckless and hopeful. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help but notice your wonderful laughter," I said, my voice tinged with uncertainty. "It's contagious." She looked up at me, those bright green eyes shimmering beneath the cafe's soft lighting, and grinned. "Thanks. It's nice to see someone who appreciates a good chuckle, she replied, warmth radiating through her words. We exchanged a few light-hearted comments about the decadence of pastries and the perfect brew, and my pulse quickened, an unfamiliar sense of connection sparking between us. As we talked, Amelia shared snippets of her life, her love for travel, and her passion for writing as she, too, scribbled in her notebook. I found her presence soothing, like balm to my frayed edges. Everything about her felt light, her laughter, her enthusiasm, even her vulnerabilities. With each passing moment, I felt layers of my own hurt begin to peel away, replaced by the thrill of rekindled joy. Sometimes it feels like the world has too heavy a hand, she said with a slightly somber note, her voice softening. But laughter has a way of lifting the weight, doesn't it? She looked at me, searching my eyes for resonance. I nodded, feeling the raw truth in her observation. And in that instant, I began sharing my story, the heartbreak that had rippled through my life, the uncertainty that weighed on my heart, and the surprising thrill of rediscovering who I was. I didn't couch my words in the safe distance of casual acquaintanceship. I let the intimacy of my truth unfold. I never imagined I would have lost sight of myself so completely, I confessed, my voice trembling slightly as I spoke. It took being shattered to learn how to put myself back together again. I found a fragments of joy, like writing, jogging, even cooking. But truthfully, I thought I'd be trapped in the shadow of my past. Amelia listened intently, her expression shifting from curiosity to understanding, resonating with an empathy that felt genuine and profound. You deserve someone who sees you for all the beauty you bring, she murmured, a soft smile gracing her lips. Her words washed over me like pure honey, sweetening an ache I thought would never fade. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue through the cafe's windows, the warmth radiating from our encounter seeped deep into my soul. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of connection and hope bloom like spring after a long winter. It wasn't about rushing towards romance, but rather embracing the beauty of this serendipitous moment. Just being here, tangled in conversation with her, flickered the flames of my budding optimism. Let's keep cheering each other on, I suggested, glancing back at her notebook filled with notes and strokes of ideas. It might be nice to swap pages or maybe even ideas. I could use a fresh perspective. Her grin brightened, revealing a sincerity that warmed my chest. I'd love that. Sometimes a little sunshine in the darkness is all we need to ignite new growth, she replied, her eyes dancing with the prospect of shared creativity. As our conversations continued to spill forth, every chuckle and thoughtful exchange stitched threads of connection tighter. Amelia's laugh filled the spaces that had once echoed with sorrow, and her genuine curiosity offered me a glimpse of something I'd nearly forgotten, the lightness of being open to new beginnings. The walls of my heart, once encased in grief and fear, started to crack and let the light leak through. I felt as if my spirit took a tentative step beyond the delicate ashes of my past, supported by the genuine joy she brought into my world. This connection, so effortless and yet so profound, rekindled flames of hope within me. The shadows of betrayal no longer held the same power. Instead, they became part of my past, woven into my growth, with the potential to transform into something vibrant and new. As I exchanged words and laughter with Amelia, it dawned on me that perhaps, just perhaps, I was ready to step out from the remnants of my shattered heart and embrace the chance of a brighter tomorrow, together, inviting joy back into my life with every moment we shared. As the weeks passed, the gulf between the painful memories of my past and the blossoming joy of new beginnings widened immeasurably. I could feel the shift in my bones. An internal metamorphosis was taking shape, sculpting even the most callous corners of my heart into softer versions of their former selves. But even as new connections flared to life, a final confrontation with Mia loomed like a dark cloud, and I steeled myself for what promised to be an exhaustive emotional ordeal. I stood in front of the mirror, scrutinizing the reflection that stared back at me. This Nathan, with his newfound resolve and intention, was a stranger to me only a few months prior. The sorrow etched into my features had begun to fade, replaced by a determination to protect the very essence of who I was. Today, I'd make the final call. I'd reclaim my life from the ruins of betrayal. As I adjusted my collar and took a deep breath, I remembered Amelia, the laughter, the ease, the kindness she embodied. Thinking of her sparked a flame of encouragement within me, one that I knew would guide me through this confrontation. The chosen venue was a small park where Mia and I had spent countless afternoons and happier days. The sun was set high in the sky, and as I approached, The swaying trees and the chorus of chirping birds seemed at odds with the turmoil brewing inside of me. Mia was already seated on a bench, her arms crossed, and I recognized that familiar posture of defiance. It struck me how far apart we had drifted, even physically. She looked up as I approached, and my pulse quickened from more than just the anticipation of our dialogue. There was a flicker of something, regret, annoyance, that flashed across her face. But as my heart thundered in my chest, it firmed up my conviction. I wanted my closure to reflect strength, not weakness. "Hey," I said, keeping my tone steady as I sat down beside her, maintaining a deliberate distance. "Hey," she mirrored, though the word fell from her lips as if she wished it away. The reality between us felt heavy, a tangible weight pressing down on both our shoulders. "I wanted to talk," I began, searching her eyes. They reminded me of stormy seas, equally capable of beautiful calm or violent chaos. "About us." It was a simple phrase, yet everything I had been feeling hung in the air like unsaid truths that loomed large over what we had once built together. "Well, I figured as much," she replied, letting out a small huff of annoyance. It didn't escape me that she looked slightly more put together than I remembered. New clothes, polished nails. I wondered if she was trying to impress someone else, someone who had captured her heart during our separation. The thought snaked through me, unwanted and biting. "We both know where things are at, Mia. I've been doing some thinking, and I can't pretend this is working anymore." "I didn't come here to drag through this again, Nathan," she interjected, her voice sharper than I expected. "Can't we just leave things as they are? It's easier that way." The dismissal sparkled inside me, anger flickers igniting buried grief. "Easier for whom?" I shot back, my heart stirring with the rare ignition of fury. "You've moved on with your life while I've been left grappling with the shards of the one we created together. I was willing to fight for us until I realized you weren't. Now I'm ready to be done." Her eyes widened, the flood of emotions that danced within them until an unsettling calm washed over her features. "Nathan, look. I didn't mean to hurt you, but our lives are just different now. You need to face that. Different. You call your repeated lies and betrayal different?" I saw the tension ripple through her, the soft exhale she took pushing my anger further. "I refuse to remain a scapegoat for your choices and unfulfilled dreams. This cannot continue. There's no love left here for either of us." My throat tightened, feeling like a noose while I fought back overwhelming sadness. 3 words I had longed to hear from her slipped through my mind, but each time they were met with the unassailable truth of her actions. Mia remained molten in her adamancy, impervious to the realization that hurt had taken root. My voice softened, underlining the conviction etched into my heart. "Letting go is painful, but it's necessary. We've both been holding on to something that no longer exists. What do you want out of this?" "I want you to be happy," she said, sincerity creeping into her tone, and for a fleeting moment, it warmed the air between us. But I also detected a thread of regret. Could our history have sparked something different had we tried harder? "But I can't change what's already been in motion." "You know that, right?" "How can you say that?" I replied incredulously. "You had a choice. We both did. Can't we just remain friends?" she proposed, but the phrase landed like the punchline of a cruel joke. "Friends?" I laughed bitterly, thinking of the betrayal I had endured. "Isn't that what got us here? Your affair twisted the very foundation of this relationship. It's almost poetic how you think we can muddy shoe our way back to that." Silence fell, heavy like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. The moment suspended in time reminded me of the unbearable truth that lay within us both. Mia's desire to remain in a blissful bubble clashed with my need for closure. She knew she was losing control of this situation. I'm sorry, Nathan," she finally said, her voice choking with an emotion I found unsettling, an unfamiliar edge that blurred the lines of resentment. I took a deep breath, letting the air wash over the rawness. "I know, but sorry isn't enough to erase what we've been through. This is the last time we speak like this. There's no going back." My voice was steadier now, the clarity of my purpose serving as my shield. Ultimately, it felt liberating. In setting my boundaries, the choking grip of regret surrounding my heart eased slightly, but the coldness contrary to the warmth Amelia brought still reminded me of the duality of my existence. "I guess this is it then," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath, as if conceding to the inevitable. "Yeah," I replied, matching her solemnity. "Goodbye, Mia." With that, I turned and walked away, feeling the promises of my renewed self trailing behind. Each step forward drawn from a well of grief had transformed into blood flow moving toward hope, a force that finally started to embrace authenticity. I stepped into the sunlight, the park and its familiar paths easing my shoulders back and my heart onward, free from the tangled webs of betrayal, ready to fully step into the new chapter of my life. With the divorce finalized, I felt as if a weight had been lifted, the chains that once shackled my ambitions and dreams finally severed. The ink on the paperwork had barely dried when the heavy fog of betrayal began to dissipate, revealing the sunlit path ahead. It wasn't that the pain of betrayal disappeared. It lingered in my bones, an old ache, but it no longer dictated my journey. I had come to understand that self-worth and resilience simplified my choices, making room for new beginnings nourished by personal growth. In the wake of our separation, I found myself drawn to Amelia, a woman whose laughter wrapped around my heart like a warm blanket on a chilly night. Our shared moments blossomed effortlessly, transforming into a relationship defined by support rather than haunting ghosts of past. It was astonishing how quickly I could transition from the remnants of a love lost to the discovery of genuine companionship. As I spent more time with Amelia, I found that love could indeed be as sweet as it felt confusing. Each conversation encouraged me to peel back another layer of vulnerability, every shared laughter stitching together pieces of my soul that Mia had carelessly shredded. Articulating my thoughts to Amelia felt like uncovering treasures buried beneath years of distrust and disappointment. It was in small, mundane interactions, sipping coffee on lazy Sunday mornings, roaming through vibrant autumn markets, and sharing stories under starlit skies, where I began to see the broad horizons of what love could be like. I discovered the appreciation for laughter rooted in kindness rather than deception, a stark contrast to the shadows that had once chased me through my days. Yet, even as I reveled in my new beginnings with Amelia, moments of reflection nudged at me, beckoning me to reevaluate the entire landscape of my experience. I closed my eyes and allowed memories of Mia to surface, both the sweet and the bitter. I recalled our laughter, the intoxicating sparks we once felt, the shared dreams of building a life together. But swirling alongside those memories were the haunting reminders of her betrayal, the way she had dressed herself in lies, twisting our love story into a distorted reflection of reality. The pain, now seasoned, bore witness to not just her choices but my own willingness to brush aside the red flags for far too long. Despite the tumultuous nature of my past, I started to realize that each heartbreak held wisdom waiting to emerge, a sense of clarity that transformed pain into lessons rather than burdens. I ventured deeper into this understanding, exploring the powerful notions of forgiveness toward both Mia and myself. Reaching out to the darkness didn't seem daunting anymore. It felt necessary. There had been a part of me that had clung to the past like a lifeline, afraid to let go. But the revelation that my worth was not bound to Mia's actions uncovered a vigor within me that thrived independently. Still, with every fragment of this revelation, a voice whirled in the background of my mind. A memory of our final confrontation echoed louder, the visceral pain that mingled with my relief as I walked away from her grasp. Mia may have been physically distant, but the emotional undertow she left clung to the perimeter of my consciousness. Would I ever manage to extinguish the remnants of resentment? As my thoughts meandered through these emotional backroads, I found solace in the autumn sunset, the fading light soaking the world in hues of crimson and orange. The warmth enveloped me, much like Amelia's presence had grown to feel, steady, grounding. I caressed the leaves underfoot. I could see the beauty in their transience, how some needed to fall to pave the way for new growth to emerge. There lay a purpose nestled in nature, a soft whisper affirming that beauty awaits wherever surrender leads. Hand in hand with Amelia, we began to walk the same streets I had traversed with Mia in happier times. The nostalgia wrapped around me, tugging at my heartstrings, since I was flooded with memories both cherished and painful. The same trees swayed gently above us. The breeze carried the scent of roasted chestnuts from a nearby vendor, stirring both joy and melancholy within me. "Do you think about her?" Amelia asked suddenly, her voice threaded with curiosity as her fingers tightened around mine, grounding me in the present moment. I paused, the question hanging between us. Sometimes, I admitted, forcing myself to meet her eyes. But I'm learning not to dwell on the past anymore. I want to focus on what we are building. The honesty brushed against the fringes of vulnerability, but the transparency between us was a lifeline not intended to drown. Amelia offered me a soft smile, one that radiated understanding. "You know, it's okay to feel. Just don't let it become your anchor," she encouraged, gentle yet firm, as her approval buoyed my spirit. Her words resonated within me. I felt a powerful shift as I endeavored to let go of the guilt mingled with nostalgia. Together we stepped into a future where both light and dark were necessary to forge authenticity. Each stride with Amelia became an expression of hope, a way to cultivate our shared aspirations one day at a time. As we meandered down the path framed by glorious autumn trees, I took a deep breath, feeling gratitude surge through me. Gratitude not just for Amelia, but for every rocky step I had taken to reclaim my life. There was beauty in brokenness, in renewal, and I recognized that every challenge faced had sculpted me into the person able to embrace love anew. With that realization, my heart swelled with newfound freedom. No longer was I merely a survivor of betrayal. I was stepping into my next chapter, firmly grounded in the belief that true love flourished in respect, dignity, and genuine connection. A soft breeze swept through, playfully tugging at our intertwined fingers, leading the way toward possibilities yet undiscovered.